verify we're live on Twitter real quick here. Probably are.
Sweet.
Okay, well, it looks like we are live. Awesome. Proof of Beauty podcast, episode number 17. We were just chatting about the complexities of building, and I asked the guys if they think there's longevity in the Solidity language. And so I guess we'll just continue.
I mean, if the EVM doesn't change, right?
Mm,
Well, I
It's kind of
mean,
hard to make a new language.
you're saying like the language itself kind of sucks to write in. I mean, I'm
mhm.
sure like as we get better
Well, I
tools,
think that's more of a reflection of the EVM is very, EVM-y. Like
I mean,
the EVM has the limitations. I don't think it's a language that. Well, it's a
Right.
mix of both, but the EVM fundamentally carries most of those limitations.
okay, so you're saying that you could imagine a future where the VM is upgraded to the point of being like almost JavaScript based like of
Maybe not JavaScript, maybe more like Rust.
Mm.
Yeah.
Something a little bit more secured of a language that has more permission systems. Now, again, this is a language designed to the point where I don't quite have a strong opinion beyond you give me what to work with and I'll work with it. Kind of an opinion. Solidity does well in the sense that we needed a language that had the right balance of like approachability, but then it also had to be secure enough, safe enough to create Compound, create Auth protocol, right? Like you can't just have like JavaScript style. Like I don't know if this is actually gonna work. It's just a really jank ass
Yeah.
corner case. It has to work and it has to have some stricter rules because every computation it can cost real money, right? So
Right.
in that design space, I don't really have too much against Solidity. But then if you're thinking about it, like we're doing on-chain art, we don't have such strictness in that sense where we're not like,
Mhm.
oh crap, if I write this incorrectly, this can lose people billions of dollars. Right. Instead for us, it's like if I don't do this correctly, the red pixel is green instead of red.
Right.
Like, God damn it, but like that's a smaller problem, right? So Solidity kind of shows its cracks when we start thinking in those ways because it just not was it wasn't designed to do that.
Mm.
So apples to apples, it's like maybe in the far future somebody creates like a EVM language that is a little bit less strict, more catered towards like writing renderers,
Mhm.
writing on chain like you know visual code or not visual but like media instead of
Yeah.
just state
I
function
mean,
changes.
that's
Right.
quite in the future for someone to create a
Yeah.
spin-off language optimized
Yeah,
for a
so
kind of task. I think, I mean, one of the discussions I had last night at this paradigm dinner was a lot of people, especially with contract development, are optimizing towards simplicity, right? And then we're
Mm.
going to get more developer tools probably. Like I know we were talking about this, right? It's like, oh, it could be nice if just setters and getters were automatically like added, right? Stuff like
Mhm.
that. And security and privacy, they still need to make that step of like automated tooling around that, like auditing and whatnot. It's like,
it's
and
good.
then after all that, then like,
Mhm.
and then there still needs to have, we need time to explore like what weird shit can we do, and then like sharing code and stuff like that, which we don't even really do. We just go on Etherscan and check out
Mm.
someone else's contract, right?
Right. Right.
So
I mean, I think we stand to benefit is I feel like we're soon gonna be one, if not the few, like last independent studios in the bear market. It's either they died or they raised money. um,
Yeah.
pretty much.
One of the two, and then there's us, and maybe like Math Castles. I think they're doing
Mhm.
well enough to sustain themselves. I don't know
Mhm.
if it's full time or not, but it sounds like it could be. Um, I think we have a huge place to play when it comes to just saying like cut the crap. We can short circuit some of the pre-production work needed to create a nice game experience. So we lay down the infra specific to an IP instead
Mhm.
of certain companies,
Mhm.
especially startups. Just start how startups would think. They would lay down the IP, a massive infra, and then effectively they treat it as a dog food. Whereas for us, it's like no,
Right.
the infra is almost the dog fooding part. We build what we want to build, and then we figure out how to get it done. Right.
Right. Right.
And I think that kind of you know wantingness to just ship something great allows us to kind of answer a lot of questions faster than I think a lot of other institutions could.
Right.
And I think we've already been answering a lot of questions right now, right? When it comes to our technology stack, the RCEs, which full heads up to, I think we're not going to call it an RCE anymore. I come to realize RCE is just another big ass renderer.
Yeah.
So it's like, wait, it's just a renderer. It's a rarity engine renderer. So I say that because I've on the side been working on kind of like upgrading ABF to a 2.0 contract version, taking all the learnings that I've had with building epics and seeing like how could we make it a little bit more standardized, and also not for the benefit of like everybody, but also for ourselves. Like, how can we build something that, like, if we were to build an NFT contract that we can use again and again for the next 5 years, what would that look like?
Right.
It's just a matter of like switching in and out parts that we do want to switch out. And that was kind of my objective with the ABAF 2.0 design. And I come to realize that everything's a goddamn renderer now. Like like the metadata is a metadata renderer. There's an image is an image renderer. If the image renderer does rarity compositing, that's up to the renderer's job, not me anymore. It got really modular.
Components, like instead of renderers.
They're all I think we should just call them like they're effectively just like React components, right?
Yeah, just
like being that they have
calling
some of them.
Metadata renderer doesn't like even make sense because it's just like composite. It's not rendering.
Yeah. I do think we just need to give everything a better name right now. I've already been like renaming a few things. So I just realized that they're just black boxes that we standardized on. And we have the intentions to release it a while. Other people can use the standardized boxes that we built and other people have built, right?
One of the things I'm thinking about too is like during the wave of when browser games, teams that were making browser games and mobile apps, that whole gold rush was off the promise of like ad revenue, basically, right?
Basically.
And so, I mean, probably this first wave of NFTs of people creating PFPs and just visual focus, just on visuals, is that first wave, and if we can kickstart the game version of that. But the thing is, there's obviously a big. I mean, but making browser games are not easy too. You know what I'm saying? That's a complicated.
Yeah, a good browser game is hard to make. Like
that's tough. You know, so like the people who are making those were no joke, and so I think
it was like an artisanal craft, right? Like
yeah.
Do you guys? Oh god, I don't remember the studio, but there's that game where it's kind of like pixel art, where you like have a wrecking ball and you have to like. It was like
I don't know.
Oh shit!
You have to break a building. And then you have like explosions. You got to put it. You only have like 10 TNTs, and
I want to look that.
It's a really. I think it's the studios I think it's like Nitro something. I don't know the studio name, but like goddamn, that's a that's a like a team put some substantial work. It wasn't just like you slapped it together and called it a day. And I feel like.
There's no React components for stuff like that. That was all raw. Every game was pretty much made from scratch, right? Essentially.
It'd be tedious.
Like, correct me if I'm wrong. If you think I'm completely speaking out of my ass, I feel like the game infrastructure space may be a little early in the development curve. I think they're trying to manifest the Unity, the Unreal engines. Of the world, where we're still kind of like in the Flash game, Atari early eras, where we don't quite even know what is an NFT game experience that really excels the qualities of an NFT, and it's not just like I want to get off of Steam to save 10% on their cut, right? Give it to OpenSea instead. I feel like people are just kind of. I feel like big money is getting a little. Wants to speed up the thing.
Right. Yeah, they're trying to.
Right.
Yeah, kind of piece the two together using cash to bridge the two totally different landscapes, right?
Yeah, maybe it would work, but I think. The more I think about it, the more I think we'll have a very invaluable place within the grand sphere of ideas as a studio. It just I feel like in some odd way I think they're going to really lead us.
I mean, because these guys are smart, right? And they're thinking about it a lot. And even when I was a kid, the thing that attracted me to crypto and Bitcoin was like, this would be so sick if I could play RuneScape and there's real money flying around. I mean, I think
Right.
everyone thought about that, right?
Right.
I guess like why isn't it working and why aren't we seeing that? I don't really know actually. Like I don't really
Like,
have
what do
a
you
big-
mean? Why? What
I don't know. Just how come
didn't work?
I
Wait, what do
just
you call Axie Infinity working?
Mm.
I
Like,
don't because it's not a accessible game to someone with no money to input, right? It's like a game like a to some degree has to at least the magic about these online like browser games
Right.
was that it was accessible. Like you didn't need they're free to play,
So
right? Um,
with Axie, do you need to have an ERC20 token to play?
you need to at least
you
put
may need
some
the
money.
NFT.
Probably to buy
Right.
some shit,
So
right?
that's kind of what you're saying, a bit of a gateway, I guess, that certain people are going to be able to make a way through depending
Yeah, it's like
on, their tech know-how.
the promise of like the when I was a kid, I was like, it'd be so sick if I could play the like start the game the same way every game you start. Like you start the base level, you don't like you get whatever free thing they give you, right? And then you work your way up. You grind. Like you actually put time into the game,
Right.
grind,
Right.
and maybe
Do
make
you
something. And
do you guys use Brave browser?
Yes.
Well, when you get Brave browser and you activate it, the moment you start using it, you start accruing BAT tokens, basic attention tokens, and the creation process for that wallet is really easy. You just literally click on it and
Right.
it's started. And basically, you can accrue all these tokens and then create an account and verify that those are your tokens and then transfer them out or whatever. But I'd
This is like
imagine
a
that
lazy design. Yeah.
I'd imagine that the gaming, in browser gaming with NFTs would be kind of like that, right? Where you just hop in, you have some sort of an account with a wallet attached to it created. You have the opportunity to claim those and move them if you choose to maybe go through a KYC process or some sort of verification process, or in Brave's what do they call it? It's Uphold that they use with Brave, right?
Mhm.
And so you can remove your bats to Uphold. Um,
yeah,
but I would
I think
just imagine it would go in that direction.
yeah, I mean that definitely is on the right path, right? But I think we're like
Hmm.
extremely kneecapped essentially by or bottlenecked by
Well, do
transaction
you
fees.
think it's like
Mm.
I look at the commentary and say it just sounds like bad incentive design in our industry.
Hmm.
Like if I was a team, my get to rich function is to create an NFT, sell it at whatever price, and hope to
Hmm.
God the secondary juices the ever living hell out of it, and I make
Right.
bank, and I get big enough, and a VC gives me enough money to do whatever you want to do.
I mean, dude, when I was a teenager, I wouldn't even have money to deploy an NFT. I would have to
Right.
ask. I would have to very seriously
Right.
think.
What I'm saying is like our current spaces is not incentivized
Yeah,
to
it's like
create, I guess, progression based
Right.
NFTs. Right.
yeah, and well, I guess like the thing I was saying too is like the transaction fees, the lack of micropayments is what like heavily kneecaps that promise of
Big time.
fluidity of like action and reaction. Because I mean, I thought it'd be cool. You're playing a game like Clump Penguin, you're walking around talking to
Hmm.
people, give someone like some help. I don't know, like anything, right? And you get like a tip of like a tenth of a cent, right? And you keep doing stuff like that. Like there
Hmm.
was so many promises when I was a kid of like interacting online where I could see the opportunity for like some type of like monetary like transaction
Right.
happening, like tipping
Habbo,
system.
with what you're talking about, would have been awesome, man. You
Yeah,
remember Habbo?
I remember that. I never used it, but I
Yeah.
think we looked at it in one of my classes at Georgia Tech, which is interesting.
Okay. Yeah. I remember playing that game as a kid and having no money, and the only option to acquire Fernie was to input a credit card. So it was like, dang, and I could see exactly what you're talking about. It was like there has to be a way for me to accrue some sort of game credit or something for me to buy some Fernie, right? But
Because a lot of people forget that feeling when you're a kid of like because it's so normalized
mhm,
now of like you get an iPhone, every kid has an iPhone, it's all logged in, they
mhm,
got credit card shit in there, like everything
right.
is all hooked up and people forgot like there used to be a time where you had to like ask your parents, like, okay, you don't have access to anything that's paid for online, you know?
Right. I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, Ash. You mentioned the state of auditing, and I know, Dave, you kind of added that it's getting better. I'd love to hear, your guys' insights on where auditing is at today and where you think it's going.
Are we referring to like contract auditing?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, with the bear market, it's probably getting a little slower.
Of course.
The demand is finally kind of maybe leveled off.
Mm.
Well, I think we've, as an industry, gotten better at looking at what could be the attack vectors. I think has saved us a lot of time collectively as an industry.
Mm.
Being a little bit better at, just like, okay, like if you have 300 lines of code, I think we are much better than a few years ago saying, okay, it's probably these 10 lines of code that will give me nightmares, right? And the other 290 does crap, right? So it gets a little better, but then too, it's like to comment more on the DeFi context, because NFTs is like, what are we auditing here? Like a mint function, like both Ash and I, we both written one. They're not that complex, right? Like the only thing that can break about it is like a greater than or less than
fire statements.
Conditional, right?
Yeah.
Like
right.
But then like in the context of DeFi, like there's so many of the actual hard stuff has already been kind of built. Unless you're building like complex financial products where you should always, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't get an audit. You should always get an audit if it's, if you're doing something really new that manages customer funds.
Absolutely.
But then like, for example, like OVs, what are, how their tokens are, they're rebasing tokens, right? They rebase your balance based on some function. So so if you own 100, let's just say, what do they call it?
How does
weapon.
rebasing work? Like when is it rebased? How often?
I think there's a bot that has to trigger trigger an action or something.
Okay.
I'm not too fully aware, but that's some complexity to writing a rebasing system, right? Like that. Thank God somebody already wrote it, proven it. So comes time somebody else wants to create a protocol that needs a rebase. It's already audited, right? It's already proven. It's battle tested, right?
Right.
The same case could be made about the C compound style tokens, right? Like STE, not STE, what is the Coinbase stake
CBE
called? CBE. God, they're all all the acronyms. I can't figure them out. CBE. This is based on compounds token design, right?
Okay. Yeah.
In our case, we use the ERC 721A, right? The standard created by the Zuki team, and we feel very safe using it because they audited the system, and we were like, okay, that's great. We build on top of it, right? I think for us, thankfully, renderers are not mission critical code in the sense that they are financially not going to be manipulated in a way that can cause massive damage to somebody's livelihood. So we get to take a little bit of a chill pill when it comes to what it does, right? In the sense that it's supposed to manipulate rights.
That's the important contrast, right? You can take more risk when there's less stakes, I guess.
Yeah. So I guess we're like re-engineering. We're thinking about the security problem within the context of what the security risks are, right? And they got smaller with renderers, with on-chain stuff. But like with the NFTs, it's just like we haven't really made anything groundbreaking for the last freaking bull market. Like I think the A standard is probably as groundbreaking as it got. The metadata part that we're innovating on, that Mathcast is innovating, doesn't have such a big security space where we, even as a studio, feel a necessitated need to have to audit our own systems that, like, with an external with an auditor, because it's mostly just like admin functions that we need to have access to. So I think in our case, the biggest point of failure is losing access to a admin key that we would need. But I've kind of been thinking about what we can do to rescue it in a worst case scenario. But I do think maybe that's an area that we can work better on. But like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you really don't need to audit a NFT unless you got some god crazy function in it
Mm-hmm.
that does something too crazy. Yeah, because it just doesn't. It's not manipulating like billions of dollars of customer funds that technically that you're custodying on behalf. But like to that
Right.
extent, like we haven't created a project. I don't think we plan to create a project where like let's just pretend like, oh, you got to stake 32 ETH for a year to mint this NFT. Like I personally not want to do that because I don't want to write a contract that has to custody somebody else's funds, not give it to us. If we
Right.
lose our money, that's our negligence.
Yep.
But if I lose your money, that's damages. Like that's
Yeah. No doubt.
that I'm not something I feel comfortable with. So
I guarantee you too, there's like some massive regulatory oversight that would be involved the moment you're handling customer funds or something akin to
it's
it,
coming.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this has been a very consistent thread from I think the creation of Mana in my head. I feel very strongly that there's a lot of innovations to be done in the gray area of what is a token and what isn't a token. I think that gradient, I think we have always approached it with a strong binary to it, where you're either a token or you're not a token. There's really nothing in between.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in doing so, you're pretty much implying that the reality of crypto is, do I make money or do I not make money? It became that kind of a flow chart, right? And if there's always a way to make money, you always got people who are too sophisticated screwing your game over, right? And I feel very strongly that if we can operate within that gray area, creating virtualized tokens that do still have financial incentive to play, but not strong enough where it's abusive, but then not weak enough that nobody gives five craps.
Right.
I think that's to an extent where we really need to work harder on in the crypto world. Especially we have L2s where things got cheaper to operate.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where we would get like what Ash would say, like progressive NFTs, where like maybe you have mana and you work really hard to use your mana in a really tactical way to make a really rare statue. And that should have value in reflection of the work that you have done and how you worked to get the mana to do that, right? It should reflect maybe that progression. But if you were to do it in a way that like, oh, you get like you get yield farming a token, I can guarantee you folks will start to opportunity cost it and
right
start to figure out so it becomes not a game, it becomes a yield farming opportunity. So
right.
I just think there's just like I wasn't even aware until we did Mana that there is a gray space that we can operate within, where it's an attribute, not a token. It's an attribute. It's consumable. It's transferable, but you can't
that
leave
seems
the token.
like that kind of stuff of like just numbers flying around seems so it seems so normal if you don't know what ERC like if you're not thinking about ERC
exactly.
but if you're coming from like, our world and everything is an ERC20 or 721, it's like yeah, all of a sudden we actually have to make a distinction and man is just a number, you know?
Yeah.
But otherwise it really makes sense. Of course it's just a number, you know? Of course it's just using the word virtual token is kind of hilarious to think about.
Yeah, people call it virtual token like
what?
It's not virtual. It's not more or less virtual than ERC20. They're both on the same goddamn medium. It's just an attribute. It pays homage to like playing Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic the Gathering, and you're like counting your mana counters when you're like, I don't remember what the magic game mechanic is, but like there's like land or whatever, and you gotta use mana from your land or whatever on the back row, or like attack and defense levels on a Yu-Gi-Oh card. Pokemon, like whatever.
And it's interesting that you mentioned earlier that there's this like gray area of what is and is not a token. Because what if, for example, mana became more valuable than the statue itself, and then all of a sudden the actual token that is the statue is looked at as mana instead of looked at as a statue, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, is it a token? is it? You know what I mean?
Right. So
Um,
I think that brings up a really interesting argument. Let's think about this at like a
mhm,
theoretical level here. Say
mhm.
I created a wrapped mana token. What it
Okay.
does is it takes like a cheap base mana token.
Mhm.
So let's just say like because like what is it? Base mana is what 60, right?
Yep.
For a unboosted statue. So let's just say it only takes those statues, right?
Okay.
You put it in, and it mints you a ERC 20 called Wrapped Mint 60,
Okay.
right? And effectively you commoditized all the
Yeah.
60 mana statues into a ERC 20 token that just says this is 60 mana.
Right.
You don't care what an NFT it is. You only care the 60 mana in this token, and you can burn it to channel it to somewhere else, right? And
Yep.
if that's the case, it's like if such a design can be made, and if people care to make it, and there is a
Mhm.
market, that gray area just went from like a one dimension to like a tesseract worth of like nuances of it, right?
Ooh.
Where
Sorry to interrupt, but here's a question. Now, let's say that you do that. Would you be detaching that attribute from the NFT? So would you
to
be
an
making that
extent,
revision? Because then there's tradability then, right? Because
yeah,
I can detach and send it to you. And
yeah, to an extent, but like
Mhm.
obviously where it's almost like a third party support grafted on top of our NFTs.
okay.
Not something that we would natively say, oh, it's transferable in that way. Like right, we have a
Right.
transfer function, but it's limited. Channeling isn't a perfect thing. So it's like in some ways, if you guys know what a gas token is, it's kind of like a gas token, right?
Mm,
Like
yeah.
it represents a consumptive ability that gives you 60 mana.
Hmm.
It's better to say it's I know we call them as statute like mana batteries,
Yeah,
but a
batteries.
wrapped mana is literally a mana battery at that point, right? It's like a buying AA batteries because it's
Oh,
like
so,
okay,
Hmm.
so
I need
that's what
60
you
more
meant by
mana.
wrapped is like you would wrap multiple tokens together just to and call it like 100 mana units. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, and
Hmm.
you basket it to a confined
Okay.
size, and
Yeah,
that
we
would make
wouldn't.
a ERC 20, right? Like
Yeah, yeah, interesting.
that would be a very
Right.
sophisticated market that I don't know if we can support anytime soon.
So even if you don't do that, though, what if the mana and the statue itself becomes so valuable that people are willing to trade their statues away, like as if it was a wrapped mana token?
I think it's. I mean,
Yeah,
I think that's really cool.
it depends on what you're using mana for. I
Hmm.
think I keep thinking about it every day of like what makes the game fun or a progressive feeling of like why would I grind through something? I mean, part of it was because other people were playing it that I knew.
Hmm.
Part of it was actually like an exploration of some kind, like a physically exploring something to some degree, right? That's why I love
Right.
like RuneScape and going to different maps and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I mean, Dave, I mean, you played a lot of games, right? But I'm sure we have different memories or ideas
Sure.
around, what makes something fun.
Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
I feel very influenced by our prior work. Like I think we need to find that mix of what is a games fun and an NFTs fun.
Well, forgetting
If
everything about NFTs, like we just think about the
well,
stuff that we.
and I play grindy games, right? So
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
for me, is I really need good progression systems.
progression.
I love a good progression
Big
system.
time, yeah. A
Yeah.
good
Like
ranked system is key.
yes, yeah, like having I think like to an extent when StarCraft 2 came out, they were one of the first guys who made like the ladder system where you were competitively
Mm,
placed against other multiplayer players and you were pretty much playing against each other and trying to see how good you were. Right. So if you were like a diamond or a
Chance did.
grandmaster,
Yeah.
right, you would know if you were worse or better. And that to me was a
mhm.
progression system that I have spent way too many hours trying to get better at.
That's probably
But
why chess is still so
yeah,
popular online too, is because they have
Mm,
a very internationally recognized progression system. That's clear,
right,
it's
very
very
clear.
right.
measurable, right?
Yeah, very measurable.
Um,
Mhm,
for me, playing Call of Duty was about getting skins. It was almost just like
mhm,
it's getting visuals crap. Like it had no monetary value, but I've put like nearly full time hours worth of time to getting them right. And
mhm.
for me, it was just that was a fun progression. And that was one of the very distinctive reactions I had when I got Halo Infinite.
Hmm.
Was the progression sucked.
It's bad.
I felt like Halo had so much potential for visual like cosmetics because it's a in Call of Duty it's a gun. That's all you got, right? But for like
Hmm.
like sci-fi masculine dudes, I mean there is females. I'll just say very well built humans. You got armor everywhere. You got helmets. You got
Yeah,
guns. There's like
Well
you
built,
had the
dude.
whole
there was a
surface,
lot of room.
right? Like and
Right,
they
like
screwed it all up. It just wasn't fun, right? And
yeah,
so I played like probably like 2 weeks and I just stopped playing. Right? And
yeah.
I was really disappointed because I
Yeah.
do think for me I deep down desire that in a good NFT.
So
An
you
NFT that
so
does good.
you think so progression of your character or your stats, you weight that higher in your mind than physically exploring like a new map or new level, new world. Like
Mm,
that's what actually I
Oh,
think.
for personally, that's
yeah.
me, but like I don't think that's the case for.
Would it technically be achievement though, not progression? Because like you're always looking forward to that next
Achievement.
thing, right? And so it's like the only reason I play Halo Infinite is to wipe clean the weekly achievement list. Or
Oh yeah, I did that for like about a month and then I got bored of it. Right.
right, exactly. But then because slowly you start realizing, oh, these maps suck. Now I have to grind it out. Do I really want to get 50 kills in Tactical Slayer? This game suck.
Yeah.
You know, like
It gets boring, right?
yeah,
So I guess
yeah.
it's more like achievement hunting with
Mhm.
soft rewards. I've never been a big open world game person.
Oh what?
I always found it a little bit like open world games where you have to kind of like
MMOs.
yeah, like to an extent. Like I never played those. I
So
know
you
I always
don't,
get overwhelmed.
but
Mm.
that's an important detail, right? It's like so even like walking around and seeing new visuals in a new map or a new area, something like that. It's like that part was not necessarily the most exciting. So to me, that was more exciting than anything. So
Right.
even play.
Which
Right.
I like to an extent. I don't think either way is a bad game.
No,
Right.
no, I'm just saying it's
Mm.
important. It's interesting to discuss those contrasts, right? It's like even
Wouldn't it-
shitty like Neopets browser games, like
Mhm.
walking to like one side of the edge that takes really far, like long to get
Yeah.
to, and it's like some weird like visuals or different types of enemies and stuff like that.
Right.
That was exciting to me, even though there was no actual progression system in those early Neopets games. They're like single playthrough type things.
I really like that too, though. Like, I remember, like in Skyrim, really experiencing that, where you go into the outer ring of the map and you can find
Yeah.
all kinds of weird armor and like dragons and shit that you couldn't find within the interior of the map, right?
Yeah.
But in that game too, there also was achievement in that if you achieved better weapons, you could go conquer more and level up your guy more.
You're not a
upgrade
Skyrim guy, right,
abilities.
Dave? You were never a Skyrim.
I never was a
Interesting.
fantasy person.
Yeah.
I love Skyrim when it came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I never
Do you
really
s-
played
yeah.
fantasy games. That was the first fantasy game I played.
Me too. Yeah.
Like for me, I love Black Ops 2 Zombies to the
Hmm.
point where like
I know,
I was
yeah.
playing it about a month ago still. It was like such an old
Mm-hmm.
game, but for me, it's like it's so grindy. It's like all I
Right.
care about is getting to like level 30 on zombies,
Right.
spraying, you know, these AIs.
Training them and running around.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly,
Yeah.
and that to me is fun.
Yeah.
But then like
Yeah,
like to bring it back.
I liked grinding zombies purely to see the weird ass effects that would happen in later stages. You know, like in the
Yeah.
Mhm.
I grinded for Pack-a-Punch. I just love seeing
Oh yeah.
like weird looking guns with weird names on it.
What you didn't like Black Ops 3? Because like that
I
had
never
all that
played Black
weird
Ops
shit.
3.
Okay, well you would like
I
it
only
then
had
because
2.
it has
I
the
knew
elements of
4
2.
was not fun for me. I
Yeah,
think
4
got a
4
little bit
sucked.
weird.
Yeah. I'd play
I
3 though
forgot.
if you haven't. You'd have a good time.
Okay, because
Wait, how
I
many
literally,
zombies?
dude, I literally paid $60 full MSRP for Black Ops 2 on my Xbox One. I'm like, that's how much I like the game. Like, why is this game not like $10? I'm like, it's that old. But they're like, I was like, God,
Right.
like, I'm literally gonna put like probably 100 hours into zombies if I buy it. It's probably the
Yeah.
best $60 I'll spend for a game. One of the
Wait,
better
so Black
$60 I've
Ops
spent.
2, was the zombies the same or did they change it a lot? Is it better or something?
2 was just like a revision on 1, right? It just
Mhm.
like did everything better.
Okay.
Yeah. More modern feeling.
Yeah,
right?
and the magic felt fun.
Yeah.
and I did get it. Just felt really just polished for a grind game.
Okay.
And also had like little flavors of like artistry I liked. I
Mhm.
love
And
the
then what
names of Pack-a-Punch
was
guns.
3 like a completely different? They changed everything or something?
3, they added a whole bunch of weird mechanics. Like you activate this part of the map and you activate this part of the map
Yeah.
and the whole map turns on because electricity turns on. And now there's all this weird shit you can use to your advantage, and you can double pack a punch your guns and like all kinds of weird stuff like
Okay.
that, right?
Yeah.
And so if you like that visual component, you'll enjoy that. But if you also like just grinding it out, 3 is pretty fun for that.
Okay. And then what's 4? What the fuck was?
I
Four
didn't
felt
even play
like
it.
4 felt
What is
like you were
Black
like
House? I didn't know there was a
yeah,
Black
like
House.
there was like stages that I really didn't like, where you were like, oh, I got to survive here. It's kind of like Grief in Black Ops 2, where it's like you got to like move through different parts of the map. The magic didn't really feel what good, so
Holy shit. I didn't realize there was a 4 came out in 2018, dude. What the hell?
dude,
Nobody
How
played it.
there's so many Call of Duties between 2 and Modern
Yeah.
Warfare that I just frankly just
God.
like completely
Right.
didn't think of that existed.
I mean, Vanguard's another one of those games that like came out with a
is
bunch of new
Vanguard
game.
the latest one?
Vanguard
That's a
is
free one, right?
2 years ago, I think.
That's a
Did-
World War II one, right?
Yeah, didn't they put out like Modern Warfare after that? Or yeah,
I know
that's what
Modern
they did.
Warfare. So there was a World War II game before Modern Warfare. I know that much.
That was World of War.
Cold War.
World of
Oh,
War,
no.
Modern Warfare,
World
Cold
was-
War, and then I guess
Yeah.
Vanguard.
No,
Because we're having
Yeah.
Modern Warfare 2 come out right now, and I'm really
Yeah, yeah.
excited. Hopefully, it's a good game, because if
That's
it
gonna
is,
be great.
you will literally not see me for like 2 months.
I played it
if it's a good
yesterday.
game.
I
The
got the
beta?
beta. Yeah,
Is it good?
and
How is it?
I'm very critical. And there were some very simple bugs that make me think like, if you guys couldn't catch these bugs, then we're fucked. Like, no, I'm just kidding, but seriously, like for example, you guys know how at the start of the game, and let me know if you guys try this, right? You know, at the start of the game, you adjust the size of your screen to make it fit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like the right side of the screen adjuster was like off my screen, and the left one is still on it, and like the bottom is not visible, and the top is still visible. And then when I actually input it and went into the game mode, there was no way to adjust it that I found anyways, and a whole bunch of buttons were off the screen and stuff, and it was just like, this feels janky. And
Yeah.
just a few little things like that. When it came to the actual gameplay, it took me a few rounds to actually find a rhythm in it because it felt a little different. I don't know. I don't want to say too much. I want your guys' opinion as well, like on how cartoony you think it feels and stuff like that. But
I'll
in general, the
probably wait.
gameplay's fun.
Like, I don't think I'm gonna get the beta pre-order thing. I'll probably wait
Mhm.
until release and
It's coming in October, right?
yeah, October, and a
Is
couple
it?
patches. Need a couple of
Oh,
like
yeah.
day one patches, and then I'll start playing it.
I'm
Let's
gonna
see,
get it,
right.
see what the guns skins are, and if it's worth it, then I'll do it. If it's not,
Oh yeah,
yeah. But also, I have to have a good time. It has to have a good like multiplayer like feeling experience.
yeah.
Like for me, I watched somebody made like these really great essays on game design, like
Mhm.
video essays, and he does it mostly on strategy games. But
Who?
he described what's up.
Who does this?
I think he's like called Chain Bear or something. His YouTube channel,
Okay.
something Bear. But like the very long channel, like you have to be a strategy guy to really appreciate his videos.
Yeah.
But he describes how much the ASMR of these grindy games matter.
Hmm.
In the sense that like you may not even be sometimes conscious of it, but like a well-designed soundscape of a first-person shooter is very, very
Yeah.
good for the longevity of your grindy game. And I think that's something that Halo Infinite, to an extent, didn't do well. It felt like all the guns felt like they were like shooting through water to an extent to me.
Mhm.
It didn't have that kind of like
Okay.
Modern Warfare where like every gun felt like a gun. There was it felt
Yeah.
weighty. The reloads felt real because there was like
Mhm.
they were like slapping it. The physics felt nice.
Yeah.
There's
On
a lot
that
of
note,
artistry.
I know what you're saying. Okay,
Yeah.
soundscape, very interesting. I never thought about it like that. But yeah.
play in Dolby Atmos as well. And so I have a theater set up around me, and like
Yeah.
Dolby Atmos is optimized for it, and it's pretty impressive. Like the guns do sound pretty amazing. The one thing that I don't like right off the bat, I'm noticing that everybody starts with one gun. So the moment you unlock loadout customization, you have the M4 in your
Yeah,
base
yeah,
piece, you know, and so
yeah. I
that's a little
remember
different.
that.
Yeah. And so,
Um, the key thing, like, to comment on Infinite, like, I really don't like what they did with the modern Infinite. Was every
mm,
gun had to follow one category, and if it had a Venn diagram, that gun could not exist.
mm,
As in, like, if you needed like a short, medium range weapon with crappy scoping, then you got the assault rifle. You couldn't
mhm.
have a Covenant version of it. You couldn't have a whatever like Forerunner version of it. Yet the SMG that had a category that had one
Mm,
gun. The Needler
right.
fitted its own category. They were all like discrete weapons. Where I
Yeah, you're
actually
right.
quite liked how Call of Duty Modern Warfare does it, where like it's an assault rifle, but they're all different flavors of an assault rifle. And for a person like me who grinds and loves ASMR, to hear different rifle fire, the flash, the reload, the time to kill, the all that
Mhm.
little nuance for me is really fun. I love figuring out where the nuance of a gun lies and optimizing myself again.
So did you guys play Battlefield? Which I would say I
Oh
played a
yeah.
lot of three
I
actually.
played a little bit of two.
I
When
Two of the
was
Bad Company.
to
yeah,
me that was
go
a
ahead.
big contrast from the rest of the Call of Duty or pretty much any shooter game because it's like
Mhm.
I mean, most of the Call of Duties it's like small maps, head on
Yeah.
head on collision basically, and it's just whoever has faster reaction speed is better at like pointing and shooting, right?
Basically, yeah.
And I liked Battlefield because it was large maps, very large maps, more realistic, I
Mhm.
guess. At drop, soundscape was
Yeah.
the environment design was much more of a focus in Battlefield than Call of Duty. That's why I bring it up at this point. I very much like that, like bullet drop, hearing
Yeah.
like a bullet whiz by. You could
Right.
hear like whiz by and stuff
Battlefield
like.
5 is when I really started noticing that. Like you take a sniper rifle and you can hear it whiz right past you, or you can
Yeah,
hear the bullet drop below your feet if
yeah,
you get shot at, or
yeah,
whatever it is, right? Like there was almost some like hyper realistic elements to that game that made it real fun.
yeah, yeah. And
Mm.
I like that too because the maps were so large. It like I could you could at least use like strategy more to some extent, like sit down and just snipe.
Mm.
But you can't really do that in Call of Duty. So you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, did you play big team battles? Like, is
I
that a thing
love
for
big
you?
team battles.
So
Yeah,
for me,
that's
I hate it. I hate big team.
right. Like I only do it for fun though. Like I
Yep.
prefer smaller
I'm
battles for
with
competitive.
friends. Big team
Right.
battle.
Well,
Fun.
I think there's like a nostalgia thing for me. When I was a kid, we used to take like two or three TVs and we'd use Ethernet cables and
Well,
connect all our
Yeah.
Xboxes, do a little like LAN party or whatever, and we would play on like the map on Halo 3 Valhalla, and there'd
Yeah.
be like maybe 10 of us. We would just battle it out, and it'd be a lot of fun, right?
really?
Um,
Wow.
yeah, well, I kind of, I mean, you grew up in the Arctic. There's like nothing to do, and if one of you guys, like, I grew up lucky with my dad's like a uh how would you put it, he's into like home theaters and audio and all that kind of stuff. I don't know what you would call that, but yeah, he's really into that kind
Cinephile,
of stuff. Yeah,
audiophile.
maybe
Yeah.
something like that. But because of that, we grew up with like a home theater system, and like we're in the Arctic, where like very few people have a home theater, and so we'd bring everyone over and we'd like play on the big screen and set up like a few TVs behind us, and we'd all just have like our cubes on the bit, like on the big screen. You could have like four people playing, and each person feels like they have their own TV, right? And so that was like I don't know, like a real cherished memory for me that I only got to experience for a few years.
Yeah.
And so like today, the big team element, it still like relinquishes some of that nostalgia for me. In that like I could jump in and kind of like feel that
Mm.
joy, but at the same time, it, like I don't know, like the satisfaction of playing big team is like wearing off. I feel like they're just getting a little bit too chaotic. Halo Infinite's big team sucked.
It does.
Right? The maps are garbage. I don't like how the game modes are set up. I don't like how a lot of the maps, it feels like instead of being like red team versus blue team, it's almost like there's this red team area, a neutral area, and then separately there's blue team area.
Yeah.
And so you never really know where the gunfight's occurring.
Yeah.
Things like that. Anyways, yeah, into big teams, but I think that I think that in general, like I really enjoy the nature of ranked competitive play. Just knowing there's people out there who are kicking my ass and are better than me motivates me to want to be better at the game.
Yes.
So right.
I
So
got,
you-
dude, I got so, like, whenever a map came out in Modern Warfare, I got good enough where, like, I pretty much was able to largely anticipate where I would die and where somebody else would be so I can kill them.
cool.
So it'd be
yeah.
like, I would see somebody, like, cross a corner, and I'm like, okay, I just have
Mhm.
to wait here. He was going to come to
Right.
me. Or, like,
just-
oh, he's going to come
right.
here. I just have to throw a flash here and then go to the other side and, like, dolphin dive in. Not dolphin dive, but, like, you know, crawl into the other side. So it's like,
Mm,
to me, I got really tactical with the map designing, and that was like, that was kind of the fun of it for me. Was
mhm.
like with
Do you-
big team, it felt a lot more RNG.
Right.
That was, but that meant like if you were playing with your friends, RNG's fun, right? Like it.
Right.
So
Did you do you find yourself like maybe picking up that ability because you grinded out so much? Like for example, like on a lot of these maps for myself, because I just jump in casually, it might not be immediately obvious where I'm going to meet somebody or where the halfway point is or where I should throw my grenade. Do you
It
think that's
comes-
something, yeah, just out of constant repetition kind of thing?
yeah, I mean, you start to figure out where you start dying, right? Like,
Right, right.
Like I think when I started playing Halo Infinite, the first few, because there's so few maps, that really frustrates me. There's like, if you play Slayer, there's
Right.
only like 4 maps, 3 maps.
And they're
It-
bad.
it-
still you like
I don't play anymore.
But like if you were to play though, do you see your friends online and try to join a game or something like that? Because I never did that. I never
I
played.
don't have a
games.
lot of friends who play
Yeah,
games that
me
I play
either.
right now anymore. I think everybody's
Yeah.
playing just other games.
Hmm.
I never played battle royales. Don't like them because they do feel like a little bit of an expression of like a big team. There's a little bit too much RNG for my liking.
Hmm.
RNG is what is RNG?
Random number generator. So that just means
Just
like
feels
there's just
random.
luck.
Yeah. That's how I feel
So,
about
like-
Warzone.
I don't play games to be competitive. Actually, I'm anti-competitive when I play games, like because I know.
Which, yeah, I
design-
think that
Like,
I kind of I feel like that's
Mm.
something where, you know, we kind of have to like diversify our field of design as a studio, right? Like,
Yeah.
I come from that world where like you give me the chess set and you tell me the rules. Give me a month, I'll figure it out and try to
Oh, yeah.
play you. If
Right.
I can't beat you, you'll know for certain, and a month later, I'm gonna try to figure out how to beat you, right? Like that to me is the love of it all. But then like I played God of War.
Hmm.
I played about like 10% of it. I just got bored. I just was like,
Wow.
I just like this wasn't something I enjoyed, and
Right.
and not that I didn't like the story. What I did after, I just went on YouTube and I watched the whole story, and I was like, wow, this is a really beautiful story that I won't spend 20 hours playing. Like it just is
Right.
not how I enjoy a game. But then like, I think, you know, to tie it all the way back to ourselves, I think like we can see that contrast of game design to an extent with Hash and London. London felt a lot more grindy. The rules were clear. You get London tokens at a specific time. The gas price was right. Grind your way through it. And then you
Yeah.
had Hash, which felt a lot more like an open world where you got to go and discover. And to an extent, I can see it in myself that I preferred one game mechanic personally than the other.
Mm.
Where Hash,
Mhm.
I really personally never did a lot of that exploring. Like a lot of people showed me what they found, and I always found a lot of value in seeing it. But I didn't go out of my own way to go and find stuff. But like when it came to London, it was like, oh, I know how to grind this, and I want to grind it, right? So it's like
Mm.
game design wise, you know, we did both, and I've come to realize both have a lot of value. I have my own personal preference, but I think both have merits. I don't think I don't want us to be building games just for one side of the equation.
Mm.
I think that would just be missing out on a lot.
I think it was the fun factor in that initial game with London too that like pumped that token so much.
Yeah.
Like when that token was pumping, I was looking at my bag and I was like, should I sell this or would that be like disingenuous? Or like it was like crazy how much things moved though. And I did sell like a seventh of my bag or something like that to round off my tokens to like 159,900 or whatever,
Yeah.
1559 or whatever, right? But yeah, that had a real real grindy game element to it, and even just like the fun of like watching gas prices, and you're like timing it certain times of the day. Like
Yeah.
for some reason, I always found at like 2 or 3 a.m. my time there was a drop off. I was always up making like the finest trades I could. um,
But I
but
feel
yeah,
like that's just like like I think like we have this great opportunity to do ritual designs, and
mhm,
I think it's like one of those open spaces where like for example, when you create like a prior NFT, the NFT had one game design to it. It had one thing, you could only do one thing. Where Mana gives us an open book, and I think that
mhm,
necessitates a exploration we can do on how can we do more expansive experiences or grindy experiences. Um, and I think that's just I mean I feel like that's going to be all collectively very fun, right?
mhm,
But I do think personally as a studio, I do want us to do a lot more explorative experiences where you're like exploring somebody's mind almost, and which I think that's what good narrative games do. You're like
mhm,
exploring the mind of a, or not mind, but minds of a
Yes.
team.
mhm.
Um,
Yes.
I feel like it's something we just haven't really fully done. I think to heart. I think to an extent it's because I'm not the kind of person who can do that well. So Ash,
Mm.
Yeah.
I think I really, yeah. So, I think it would be great to have something like that come out. I
Yeah.
think that, it's not my forte, but I think it is an incredibly fascinating expression of art of the self of game design, right?
Did
But
right. Ash, did you play The Witcher or like Witcher 3?
Witcher was actually
Mm.
there's a good game to bring up actually because it's one of the
Mhm.
games I get into at a very
No?
hard time to. Like
Well,
I
it's
was
hard.
I was a fan of the concept of Witcher. Like I really liked
Mhm.
that idea lore of like okay, he's like and that Netflix actually put a nice like animated movie about the
Right.
Witch of like how the Witchers are created and stuff like that, which is really cool to see. So I wanted to get that feeling when I got the game, but then I started playing it and I was like, the controls are too complicated. There's too much
Mhm.
fancy bullshit. Like there's too much like talking and walking around. Like
Mm.
I kind of want to just get to it, like a streamlined
Okay,
experience.
okay.
Um, and so to me, actually, I play these days. I don't even play games on. I play games on easy or even assisted mode
Mm.
because to me, I want no difficulty when I'm playing a game. That's not why I
So
played a game. You know?
right. So like when I asked you about The Witcher because I kind of see The Witcher as like a halfway between like an MMO and say like a game like gosh,
Skyrim.
Bloodborne or like I'm forgetting what the games are, but there's like a whole series of games like that that are just really difficult. I
Dark
I
see
mean,
Souls.
Dark
even
Souls, yes.
cool
I
stuff.
like I see Witcher being a lot more visually pleasing, and like there's a lot more of like that creative story element. Like you can tell there was like a team that really loved that universe who built that game. But then I had the same issue you had where I couldn't get into it because of the complexity,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so you have this big, beautiful world. It has all this lore built out. It has a show about it. It has all this stuff to it. Um, but they made the game too difficult to really enjoy
That's
it.
why I really appreciate the approach of Devil May Cry,
Mm,
especially for the most recent game, because they actually two also have like a rich lore and like a long history of games that have been made, and they could have definitely gone the route of like fantasy and like over dialogue and like making everything like super high like
hmm
lore, but they kind of just like they went into the arcadiness of like okay, we're just gonna make really clean combat design and like
hmm
combo design and shit like that, and like it goes from like D to triple S ranking, right, for like
hmm hmm
statistics or something like that. And that to me was one of the few experiences I really love grinding to get good at combos and like try to
mm.
get up the ranking during like a fight and stuff. And that was one of the games too that I would play on higher difficulties just to like bust it down. So
Okay,
uh,
yeah, yeah.
it's good to actually. It's a nice exercise for I don't know during this podcast to walk through all these games because it's giving me new ideas of
hmm
what sh- what should we try to like what are these how do we distill these concepts into something that makes sense. for us.
Yeah, we have such a weird problem, right? Like
Hmm.
we worked so hard for the last 2 quarters,
Yeah,
getting to a place where we can have these conversations, and
Hmm.
now we're kind of reconciling with this world where like, wow, our problem isn't what can't we do; it's a more like what should we do,
should we do? Yeah.
Hmm.
right? It's all possible. I was
Yeah.
just like a day ago reading the WAV file spec a little bit, seeing if there's a day where we can do on-chain like audio file generation. A little harder than I thought, but it is possible
Cool.
to do base64 encoded audio NFTs on chain. Um, yeah, sorry, but I completely forgot my thought here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think at the end of the day, what like we should create games that we enjoy, right? Like we create
Mhm.
NFTs that we would like, right? Isn't it? As much as there's good market design and degen design, like we will do take a page out of that. I just want to like I feel like at the heart of it all, we got to create stuff that we enjoy
Right.
to the tastes of how we do game design, like to the games that we enjoy. Like I don't remember the last time I played a game where um that I played it for the lore.
Hmm.
The lore is always a nice additive benefit to me. That usually gives me like a deeper relationship to it beyond just like, oh, this is chess, right? I think
Right.
chess doesn't have lore to me. Like its lore is a
Mhm.
reflection of its player history. Like I don't know
You're
why
right.
it's a rook or that. Like there's no story behind the rook that I would at least endure to. But yeah, I don't know. It's just like
The opposite's flipped, right? It's like the why is more important than the what am I doing, and then there's only
Yeah.
very few activities that I just do, like I
Right.
guess that I don't care about like any history or anything basically. Is
I
like
mean,
doing
again,
it.
right. Again, to pull back to like Halo, as you were talking about, like Halo has some expansive, incredible
the
lore
lore is
around it.
amazing.
Like, yeah,
Yeah, interesting story, but I
right.
couldn't. I don't think you could get that by playing in one game. So you had to play all of
Right,
them.
exactly, and especially not with the most recent Halo. It was almost like peak Halo was like Halo 3 and Halo Reach, and then
Yeah, Halo
since then they
3 was
haven't been able to
real.
capture it.
Yeah, Halo 3
Halo
was real.
3, it was
Yeah.
so big, and I mean, like if you were lucky enough to like be in the early YouTube days, it was so fun. People uploading their clips and just like shit talking each
Machinimas.
other and
I
stuff. Yeah,
remember that.
like
'Cause I was so jealous of people who had Xboxes at the time. I was like, holy shit, this looks so cool, you know?
I was a big
right,
red
right,
versus blue person when I was younger. I
right. Red
watched that
versus
shit.
Blue is awesome. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of like really creative. Well, there's like Forge mode, right? And
Yeah.
so there's Forge happening, and then there's like this creative niche where people were almost making like Halo mini movies using like Forge and like different animations and things. And like I feel like it sparked a big community around it, and there was all these different people finding different things in that community, but there were enough attributes of the game where people could find, like find their niche in it. Like I was never really a big Forge guy, but I loved playing Forge mode with my friends because you could just spawn a rocket launcher out of nowhere and that kind of thing. Um, Halo did that really good, but today they failed to do that. So yeah, kind of like drawing from like you can
Like
have all the lore, but
there was like a YouTube channel I was watching just even a
Mhm.
day ago that was like pretty much shit talking Infinite.
Mhm.
And he brought up this really interesting point where it's like Halo Infinite kind of screwed up all the little like niche player bases that Halo had.
Mm.
Right, there
Mhm.
were like
Mhm.
the competitive folks or the campaign co-op folks, which is a huge community, right?
Right,
Playing
right.
co-op with your friends.
I can't believe they
Uh,
took that out. Yeah.
right. There's the Forge world. There's the Forge map players who
Mhm.
just loves to play custom maps. There's
Yeah.
like Griffball, those kind of party games. There was like so many genres. There's like I think Halo meant so much for
Exactly.
everybody in different
Mhm.
ways, and it did a great job to an extent to everything. Largely driven by its community. And then modern Halo Infinite, they're like, we can't upgrade our multiplayer system because we didn't design the UI to do it. I was like,
Mm.
man, your
God.
problem is UI design.
Yeah.
Like, bruh,
Yeah.
like you guys could have figured it out earlier. Like, this is the heart and soul of your community, the project that you guys built, which was
Yeah.
making fun game modes in your multiplayer, having Forge World, having all these things. You just lost all your communities. Like it really sucked.
Right.
It was
Right.
funny last night when I was asking people if they seen Tenet. Most people, almost actually, no one saw it.
Really?
No one
Really?
watched it, dude. I was like, what? How? It's on HBO,
It's
bro.
unfortunate.
Thinking about it though, it didn't get the same kind of like hype. Okay, it has the same kind of vibe as Inception, but not as much acclaim.
Yeah, of
Right?
course.
Well, it
So,
was also
Right.
during COVID, right?
I
yeah,
think so.
yeah, yeah.
And didn't
was
it
a
do a
COVID.
Netflix release or something instead of like a
HBO release.
theatrical?
No. So Tenet was the first movie to release in theater, big release in theaters
Mhm.
Oh, right. Okay.
during the pandemic. So
Okay.
that's why it performed so poorly. But like they made it and they're like, fuck, we have to release it, right? Like
Right.
Like,
Right.
at some point. So, but yeah, anyway, I just brought it up because I mean, this whole conversation is every day this week I've been thinking about Pincer and just trying to hone in more and more into like a true.
Yeah, that
essence.
movie ages like fine wine
Mhm.
to me. That every time I watch it again, I'm like, oh, like
It's cooler, right? Yeah,
it gets better.
the
Which-
relationship with Robert Pattinson and the guy too, the protagonist is sick.
Yeah, which
That's
to an
sick, yeah.
extent, now I do feel like you can design cinema that is meant to be rewatched,
Mhm.
or you could design cinema that is meant to be watched once
Hmm.
and you experience something very phenomenal.
Yeah,
James
And I
Bond.
do think that, yeah, I do
Yeah.
think like modern cinema, due to the box office performance design, may have leaned to do one end a little bit too much.
of course, yes, 100%.
Where I've come to realize Tenet, wow, like I watched it like about a month ago with my
First time I watched it made no sense. Absolutely,
it made no sense. Yeah, exactly.
I
And then
didn't
the
even
more you
understand
watch,
what it was. I didn't understand what the conflict was and what even the third act of the movie was happening. You know, it was just
like to
That's
an
funny.
extent, like my last time I watched it, I didn't quite care about reconciling the logic of the world that Nolan
Yeah.
created. I cared a lot more about the empathy of the characters living in a world where you have to sacrifice so much of yourself
Yeah.
to perform a humanity altering action.
yeah.
And that this commitment is a reflection of also, as they call it, faith in whatever the universe and how it works.
Mhm.
One of the things they don't talk about in the movie that's very interesting is once you invert, you're now a temporal traveler. You're no longer in. You can never be in the present now. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like once you invert, it's done. Like you're no longer living in your plane of time anymore. Like
Mhm.
instead of go backwards in time, invert again, and then go forwards in time, and now you're just
Do you
older,
think-
but past. You know.
Do you think that this movie draws from like metaphysics or anything like that, or like some weird esoteric shit?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think so.
gives me that vibe a little bit.
Yeah, because in the end, right, he's like, so we've been friends for a long time. It's like this is the start of a what did he say? This is the end of a beautiful friendship for me and the start of it for you. And I was like, wow, that's pretty incredible.
It's a really good quote, and I just love that the whole story with the whole universe it built up to is really, it was a story of like, I think Neil having to face his own like kind of like facing demise with a smile.
Mhm.
Yes, exactly.
And I found that very powerful.
What's happened's happened.
Right?
Say,
Right.
And I think I just like its interpretation of time in a way that I just don't feel like we readily see within more commercial projects.
and Dolan has an
Mm.
obsession with time, right? So actually,
Yeah.
every movie
Mhm.
he's made has strongly relies on the time temporal qualities.
Have you guys watched
Mhm,
a movie
mhm.
called
It's a
Ad
movie.
Astra?
Have you seen Memento?
Oh, Ad Astra. I believe I
The
have.
James Gray movie with Brad Pitt.
A lot of people
Oh
didn't
yeah.
like. I like that movie.
I love the
The-
movie. I absolutely loved it. I love one of its final lines about how like his father could see distant planets but couldn't see the love in front of him, which was his son trying to rescue him. It was like this kind of ideal blindness
Hmm.
that our commentary about Tenet, I feel like a lot of people are blind to to its quality as an art piece. Like I think there's a lot of just even out of a lot of other mediums of art that has that quality, and I think that's like
Right.
first. I think it takes a lot of balls and confidence to create an art that needs to be sat on, right?
Oh yeah, big
Nolan
time.
could have totally made Tenet a much more commercial experience in the sense that it could have been understood and experienced once, and that was it. But he took the confidence to say, no, I'm going to make a movie that demands an audience to be a little bit smarter, a little bit more patient. And obviously, it didn't maybe receive at the box office well enough to maybe warrant Warner Bros. To do it again and again and again. But
Hmm.
you don't see these things often because it is really, really, really challenging, and it's a risk, and it's something that I think commercial critical reviewers miss out on a lot of other art mediums in general. Like we see that with the NFT world as well.
Mm.
It's about the first blow where I think the confidence of an artist to create something that has a much longer temporal access to its enjoyment. Now that takes so much more work. It takes confidence. It takes a certain kind of a commitment.
I mean, I think any
Mhm.
artist takes their craft very seriously wants something to last the test of time, right? I mean, that's the thing about
Right.
movies and anything like that.
Yeah.
Um, obviously, that idea is not necessarily present in our world in NFT space, right? You said, like we always talk about IPFS, like it only needs to last as long as it needs to, you know. But I think, I mean, a large portion for me is like movies are a portable media format, in the meaning they can last forever, you know, in that regard, as long as you store it somewhere. And that's powerful, right? So a painting needs to be physically stored somewhere, like, you know, put photography and like any kind of things like this or
I think
permanent.
making a film that is also relevant forever. I mean, I'd imagine that'd be very difficult. Like, it probably doesn't matter what time in the future, 100 years from now, 50 years from now, you watch
Very
Tenet,
hard.
or
Yeah.
like a movie like Interstellar, where like time dilation is going to be relevant, and it's always going to be probably complex for the average individual. And even just to do what you were saying, Dave, make a movie like Interstellar, where you got this overall arching theme, then you got this theme of time dilation that kind of throws this wrench in the theme. You're kind of like, what is going on here? You got a lot of people would have to sit on that, and you got to be willing as a director to be cool with that. And I can only imagine how complex it is to even think that out.
Yeah.
With that big of a budget too, right? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
it's big
Exactly.
budget, right? Like,
The quality of timelessness or classicness for a movie is really difficult. I actually think anything to do with sci-fi is very, very hard to make it timeless or classic.
Right.
But some movies are able to do it, like an Alien and stuff like that, right? But when I think about a timeless movie, actually the components of the movie need to be really simple and universal. So I think about I was just thinking about now it comes to mind like Casino Royale. Actually, I think about that as
Such a good
timeless-
movie.
It's
Such
so
a good
it's so
movie.
good
Yeah.
and underrated. Actually, a lot of people don't.
It's actually insane. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
because it's an amazing story of like a hard man falling in love and then becoming James Bond, right?
Right.
That's really
Right.
what it's about. And that's in all elements of the movie, the villain, everything is like, yeah, it has elements of classic James Bondness, but every part
Yes.
of it is fully relatable. Like if you didn't know anything about James Bond, you know?
Right. Yeah. That's actually an incredible movie across the board. Like,
Yeah.
and I mean, even just as a Bond film, isn't it ranked like number 2 of the 25 Bond films or something like that?
what was
Like,
number one?
I think it's the
Uh,
best one. Yeah.
I don't know. I think
Not only the
maybe,
best Bond film, one of the best action.
I think it's the
movies.
best too. Let me see best ranked Bond films, because I'm just curious. But yeah, that was an incredible
Like,
movie.
there's no elements in the movie that have like I mean, except like the whole shorting stocks and stuff like that, but like nothing about it has something like pins at the time, you know.
There were shorting stocks in the movie.
That was the thing. Like that's what the whole airline craft. Remember trying to blow up the airliner? That guy, that scene. Yeah.
Yes, in the beginning, the terrorist attack. Ellipsis.
Oh, I completely forgot about that part.
Okay, so apparently it was Goldfinger. On this time on, and then from Russia.
So it's not
with
the
Love.
Craig movie.
I've seen a few ranked not a Craig movie, but Craig's movies do okay minus Quantum of Solace. I mean,
Yeah,
Skyfall was ranked, I think, like number 4 or something of the top Bond films. There wasn't as much acclaim for Spectre or for No Time to Die as well, and I think it's because of the
those are more
dramatic
classic.
ending and
They're meant to be classic James Bond stuff.
right. And I actually like you said something earlier. Like there's some movies that are made to be rewatched, and some movies you just watch once. Like Casino Royale, I've rewatched probably a dozen times. Yeah, where I actually just rewatched No Time to Die, and it still affected me emotionally, but more in the sense of like where I was just pissed off. It's like, okay, well, why did they do it this way? Or after when you watch it the second time, instead of appreciating all those like classic elements, like oh, they brought back the DB5, oh, they brought in the classic this. It's like, oh, they're fitting it in. Like that's how it almost feels, right? Like it's the last hurrah now, so we got to fit all this shit in, and it just totally destroys it. It
was fine. I think it out of context it would have not have worked, but
right.
The reflection of the franchise worked so hard to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it
was adequate.
I think I really see Spectre. Skyfall was the beginning of that James Bond lore, basically. But Spectre and Skyfall Spectre and No Time to Die are reactions to the Avengers like universe, where like everyone wants a continuation and like universe built. But really, the Casino Royale is standalone in that aspect. And then the next movies try to revisit the amazingness of Casino Royale by bringing out all this like Spectre shit and whatever.
I've always wanted them to revisit the aspect of GoldenEye where he had 006, I think it was. And basically he had this partner who later on in the movie you find out is like actually the antagonist, right? But I loved that element of like, oh, James Bond isn't the only agent who has skills. You know what I mean?
Like the only one out there blowing up random.
Yes, the only one who can jump in a moving plane and take over it. It's so I'd love to see more of that brought in. I guess in the most recent casting, they said that they're looking for somebody who can, I guess, commit to the role for 10 to 12 years.
That's dumb. Right? Oh my god.
Yeah, and so whatever it is, like I hope that this moves in the right direction. Like I don't think there will be a better Bond than Daniel Craig in my personal opinion, but
I think he really reflected the time as well. As much as we call it the timelessness of it, they were like, how do we make a Bond movie that talks about the gray areas of modern conflict, right?
Right.
And that the character actually, as much as we have painted it with like the older Bonds, he is a very complex character if you do it right.
Right.
So if it was a really nice interpretation of like, how do we take a very fictionalized character that had a lot of like just unrealism to him and make him
human.
Human, yeah. And then I think there's a contrast I always see that compared to like say the John Wick series, where I feel like they almost kind of like what do you call it? Went back to creating the fictionalized character that is Keanu Reeves, because the guy literally just never like he takes 5 bullets and guy still lives, right? Like and he's unstoppable. He's like this mythic character, but they did it in a very modern way, and I think it's a really well done kind of like mythical main character that does feel like it reminds me of like the Sylvester Stallone old movies, whenever the freaking hell like Terminator, like I was going to call him Terminator, I was going to call him Governator, because as a Californian, Arnold Schwarzenegger was our governor for a brief time.
Governator.
Yeah, I mean, like Governator made those movies.
That's what makes a hero cool, right? It's like you can feel like they're gonna die to some degree. Like there's real.
Do you guys like Kingsman?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Kingsman was cool. Kingsman was really good.
Any of these like sequels, I don't like them.
I thought Kingsman humor was like so over the top that it was funny. You know what I mean? Like
did well in its context world of what other action franchises were doing. So I really enjoyed it. Just like these were such cool people in cool suits and very dapper.
Right. What about MacGruber, guys? Did you guys see MacGruber?
I
What's
don't know what
that?
it is.
Oh, it's a comedy making fun of MacGyver. If you haven't seen it, it's really funny. Like it does a great job making fun of today's action movies. Like I'm laughing thinking about it. Like it's really funny. Maybe it's not that funny today. Who knows? But when I first watched it, I remember dying. I saw it in theaters.
This looks like a 2004. Okay, 2010. I see. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and they do like because at that time, like you guys may recall, like there was like the Expendables and like all these different movies
The
like
H-team,
that, right? Like
every
so
single thing.
many, right? And so this movie comes out, and it was just like perfect timing. Like it perfectly made fun of that genre of film, and I really appreciated it.
Thunder is a great movie that I always
Oh,
think about.
I love Tropic Thunder. I've watched that a lot. Yeah, so many times. I can quote that movie
Tom
through and
Cruise
through.
is crazy.
Yeah, that was good timing. Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like isn't that of all art, right? Like genre happens, commentary with the very genre happens as well.
Right. Like the
Right.
satire of it.
Yeah, and I
Almost.
always kind of felt like we were the more satirical bunch of the crypto world. I always like that quality of like commenting and an irony with irony.
It's like a healthy cynicism, you know.
Yeah, like Ash and we watched it together. We watched Lego Batman,
Yeah,
but like
Oh yeah.
I loved it.
Lego Batman, if you are a DC fan, you'll probably not watch a more accurate Batman movie than Lego Batman on the character study of who is the Batman.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's
I was watching now.
Way about how meta that movie was. Like I did not know that at all.
Like that movie. If you watch like the Nolan Batmans, you watch the new Batman with Matt Reeves, you watch the old Batmans, you read the comics, you watch Lego Batman, you're like, holy cow, this is the most accurate Batman. Like it's obviously like a satirical interpretation of the character, but I love commentary movies that just kind of poke fun at the constructs of the medium or the context of the story that you're playing within, right?
Right.
There was a game that I wanted to I think like Borderlands does a little bit of that with its humor. Now I haven't played that much.
I haven't played Borderlands too much, but just
I only played it a little bit, but I hear what you're saying. Like I think it was Borderlands 2 that I played. And it had that like lighthearted nature to it, like, oh, I'm living in this effed up world, but I'm just like a chill guy and everything's okay. And you know, like
it's like Mad Max, funny Mad Max vibes type of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, like, right? Isn't like Deadpool like a reaction to its own superhero genre, like
and Kick-Ass?
And Kick-Ass,
yeah. Wasn't there one more movie, guys, like as well, like superhero movie? I think it was called. And it was made like at the same time that like Scary Movie 3 and 4 and all those different kinds of films came out. Yeah.
I was not a big fan of the Scary Movie style of comedy. It was just very like raunchy type of type of thing, like cheesy almost. But
right.
That was the first of that meme meta genre. I think those guys, right? And then what they did next,
Yeah. That actually started out. I think that created a genre in itself, though, because they did it so many times, but not so many movies that people are like, "Oh, I can create a film like this," and people want to watch it. And then you had films like Kick-Ass succeed, and like maybe if we didn't have like the Scary Movie style film before Kick-Ass, it wouldn't have done as well. Because like Kick-Ass was also pretty intense, though. Like it had some like really like. It was like almost like the humor could be almost like too grotesque, or it was like it like pushing boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
But yeah, anyways, yeah, I actually really appreciate chatting about, cinema with you guys, because it's easy to see as well where creative direction and where you can draw inspiration from all the different creative direction, right?
I mean,
and I'm sure,
only thing that's happening right now that seems exciting is I don't know if you've seen the horror movie X.
No.
Yeah, basic premise of that. was like what like they tried to make these group of friends are shooting a porno basically on some set, and then that's a slasher film basically commences.
Okay. Yeah.
And then that guy spun off that world into his own universe, and now he made like a sequel called Pearl, which is a prequel to that whole thing. And it's someone described it. I saw reviews like fucked up. Alice or what's that? Wait, Dorothy. What is that movie? What's it called?
Alice in Wonderland.
No.
Wizard
Lord
of Oz?
Explorer.
Wizard of Oz. Yes, fucked
Yeah.
up Wizard of Oz.
Wow, I
Yeah,
am so off there. Okay.
Yeah. Dora the
You
Explorer,
said
dude?
Dorothy, so
I thought you said Dora's. I was like, Dora the Explorer? Like, what's in the name?
We're not in Kansas anymore. Yeah, so I think I'm excited to watch that this weekend, probably Pearl.
yeah.
And see what this guy did. I mean, it must be actually it should give us some insight actually how these guys are going about creating their own universe and
Yeah. I'm gonna finally watch Maverick. And so
we're gonna love it. We're gonna love it.
yeah, it's gonna be sick. I bought it.
It's exactly like if they took the 80s movie style of like
Mhm.
cheesy lines, cheesy plot,
Yeah.
but then they kind of just like made a new one and paid a lot of faith to art of cinematography, I think.
Yeah.
It just felt like a movie that they put a lot of love into the production.
We'll see Miles
Yeah.
Teller,
No doubt.
dude. It's gonna be so good. Yeah.
Mm.
But like a lot of the plot, like as a person who kind of like reads into how the military operates, a lot of it's fake. Like militarily,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
just not how the government will not do a lot of those things. They're not gonna put a freaking how old is Cruz? 50-something-year-old, like in a plane
Yeah.
like that again. Like he's already kind of like, should have already been discharged out of whatever reason or
10
doing a
years
desk job.
too late. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's a good movie. It's a fun movie. And the music, I didn't realize how iconic like the Top Gun music were until they made like homaged for like Hans Zimmer made effectively homaged variants of the original music. There was like the orchestral versions of the theme. There was like the
Cool.
more like the sad version.
It's just a good time.
That's cool.
It's like just a really fun movie to watch, to be honest.
I have-
It's hard.
Yeah.
I
hard to
have made
Yeah.
a good chunk of epics merge on the backs of 24 hours nonstop listening to the Top Gun Maverick album. That has literally been what I've been juicing myself up on.
That's hilarious. I'll make sure to pay attention.
It's epic, but it's also just felt a lot of pending potential in the music. So,
that's cool.
But I mean, like, yeah, to bring this all back, I feel like, in a time of the bear market, especially in a time where everybody's reevaluating a lot of things about who they are and what they are and where to get money and whatever, I'm coming to a point where, I think I feel more and more stronger about where we are as a studio and where our position is, in the sense that as more companies are raising money, as more places are becoming more startup-y, man, like I think the conversations we're having today, not just in like the abstract of like a happy hour, but to think that like I'm gonna take a lot of what we talked about today and be like, crap, I'm gonna be using this thought in the context of my work, right? In the context of our artistry. I feel like, man, our space really doesn't have a lot of that anymore. Maybe it never did in the beginning, because it was always about mechanical design, about intellectualism. It was always about the grand philosophy of a decentralized world where I think, especially now in the bear market, I feel the more I talk to other folks and how they approach NFT design, IP grafting, and whatever, it just feels we're becoming more and more starkly kind of the weird black sheep. Like, we were always a black sheep, but I think just how we approach things and now I don't know if we're right in the long run, but I think we just need to have conviction that we're on to something very different.
Yeah.
Very different than a lot of other places within the crypto world. And in the bear market, man, sometimes you would love for things to have more signal or more people or more followers, but
Yeah.
I'm in no rush for those right now. I think there's a lot of great things we got to work through and think through and challenge through. And
Yeah, I mean, for me,
Yeah.
this period is sort of kind of revisiting how it felt when I first started working at BitPay. So I mean, doing that stuff was not exciting, cutting edge technology I was doing. It was just JavaScript stuff, right, front end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, it's not like we had a lot of attention. No one is paying for stuff with Bitcoin, right? And but I had a good, strong conviction of, this is needed by the world. Let's like keep showing up at work and trying new things and thinking about it and talking. And I think
oh, my dog just came in.
I didn't know you had
Oh, my family's dog. Oh, she's just now parked right there. I didn't even know my door was. She could open my door.
I need to. I think during this time it makes sense. I'm personally trying to return to a conviction, basically. Like a
Mm-hmm.
why are we doing this? What kind of ideas do I want to get out there beyond just what's cool, what's like cutting edge, like what's exciting? It's like, all right, what kind of message do I actually want to share? Like what is everyone else doing that I think what is worth saying that not everyone is listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel I think plus one to everything there. Like it, I think people in the bear market, there's a phase of the bear market where everybody's still chasing the winning strategy of the bull, and still think there's still some chasing going on, and I think that's where like folks are like reconciling with like, should I keep chasing or do I have to do something all new? That I think a lot of folks are like could be very demotivated when that doesn't work, and I think
big time.
It takes a certain level of confidence to say that actually the only way forward is to just go forward with the conviction of what makes you tick and talk and think and makes you passionate to wake up and do things. So in some ways it's like, yeah, like I know that right now how many IPs right now are actually kind of like being like doing bigger things. Like right now I feel like I think my camera literally just overheated. So
Oh,
you guys can hear
well,
me.
yeah, we can still hear you.
That's something that I'm gonna note. I think an hour and a half is gonna. Yeah, I have to figure that out. But
that'll do it.
yeah, like it's like I'm looking at what Cool Cats is doing right now. I'm looking at what Bored Ape, Suzuki. I feel like everybody else is just like
they're social clubs. I mean, they're just trying to create these nice social clubs. But I think as long as I continue to keep thinking about this meaningful ideas and some kind of message that makes sense, commentate. We have lots of things to comment on. It's just how do we do it? How do we comment on it, right? And that's the tricky part because we're in the NFT world. We're not essay writers or authors or filmmakers. So
yeah, and to revisit that statement, we do our best work through our NFTs. I feel like we can even augment it to say I think we enjoy and do our best work in that medium. I don't think of myself as like a thread writer. I don't like writing Twitter threads all day. I know some folks that's their whole crypto livelihood is just writing newsletters, writing Twitter threads, commentating on other people's work. That's just not how I feel like I want to contribute to this space. And yeah,
I mean, it's a challenge. I see it as a challenge to use it's like if all writing materials in the world were just porn basically, and all of a sudden someone writes a book, right? There's a big difference. Like that's what I see it as.
That's a great way to say it.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
And that will be our challenge for however long we can keep this up. So
yeah, no doubt. Well, guys, that was a pretty awesome conversation. Should we call it here?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, for everyone who tuned in, we appreciate that. Our Discord, discord.gg/POB. Feel free to check it out. Say hi. We'll say hello back. Always feel free to pop in, guys. Thank you for listening. You guys have a great weekend.